What's going on, guys? So today in this video, we're going to be going over how to evaluate AI chatbots, AI systems with live dashboards, okay? So this is one I spun up real quick. Whole point of this was to evaluate the actual performance of a specific chatbot that we built for an AI fitness quiz, all right? And again, this is just all a demo, so this is all made up results, but nonetheless, this will give you guys a lot of info on how to evaluate the chatbot, how to actually know if it's working, to figure out what's missing from it so that we know what we can improve on, things like that. So the funnel that we built this dashboard off of is this fitness offer AI quiz funnel, okay? So how it works is it asks you, so this quiz is gonna ask you a set of questions about your fitness goals, like your primary fitness goals, the specific event you're training for, what have you been trying, what's your schedule like for working out, past injuries. We're gonna check if the response is in scope or not. So like what if someone asks or says for like their primary fitness goal is to, I don't know, like land on the moon or like to become a wizard or something like that. I don't know, right? It's not related to fitness, right? We're gonna check if it's in scope or not. If it is, cool, we're gonna continue on. If not, we just gonna send them like a fallback answer type of thing, okay? Nonetheless, if it is in scope, we're gonna categorize this user based off their responses to lose weight, gain weight, reduce pain, train for a marathon, recover from an injury. The whole goal of this quiz, by the way, is to generate fitness advice based off freeform text, and we use AI obviously to do that. So once we categorize the user, we're gonna generate fitness advice based off the category. And we're going to generate this fitness advice based off our knowledge base. So this is a huge part of the dashboard. And evaluating any AI system is evaluating the context we're actually providing to the prompt, right? Because to give fitness advice, we're going to use our actual knowledge base, right? But what if someone puts in their fitness goal to fix my back pain, but nowhere in your knowledge base you have nothing about back pain? How is this AI system going to actually give a real recommendation based off your knowledge when you have no knowledge about back pain inside here? And that's the whole point of evaluating context. It allows you to figure out the missing gaps in your knowledge base in real time that you're missing. That way you can add it in, and that way your customers actually get a legit recommendation from you, right? Okay, so we generate the advice. What we're gonna do next is a hallucination check. So what we wanna do with a hallucination check is we wanna check if the answer we generated, so the fitness advice that we generated is strictly from the context we provided. I'm sure you guys already know this with LLMs, but if you ever play with ChatGPT, like Claude, anything like that, it tends to do this thing called hallucinating, where it sounds incredibly confident, but it is just terribly wrong at the same time. That is what it means to hallucinate. And the whole point of a hallucination check is making sure if the answer generated and every fact mentioned in this answer or in this fitness advice recommendation, right, is actually pulled from the context provided, because we don't want to send out bullshit advice. Okay, and again, we're gonna log all this in the actual dashboard too, okay? And from there on, this is just related to the funnels, like returning a preview of the fitness advice and capturing their email for like a lead magnet and shit like that. Anyways, though, to actually put this up into a dashboard though, the main thing is all this data, so the answers to the qualifying questions, the in-scope response, the categories, the fitness advice, the hallucination checks, all this, we're gonna send it into Supabase. I use Supabase a lot just because it's a nice, easy way just to store all your data, right? So this is a demo I ran with this fitness funnel. So yeah, it's just a bunch of metrics that we collected, and I'm gonna go over each metric that I collect. So yeah, I use Supabase to host all this data, and then from there you can use an app like Streamlit to just pull in all this data and do live dashboards to make pretty plots out of it, right? But yeah, so let's go into the metrics so I actually tracked when evaluating an AI system. So the first thing is gonna be in-scope percentage, okay? So this is gonna be the percentage of the users who are relevant to fitness, health, or wellness and help us ignore off-topic or non-set inputs. And this can easily be done with LLMs, so just using like a prompt like this. So this is more fitness related, but you guys can just tweak it to whatever situation you guys are in. But the whole point of tracking this is because this pertains to the funnel. You do not want people that are unrelated to your offer, obviously, like putting shit into like your AI system. One, it's gonna skew your data, right? Because let's say you base these hallucination checks and your context retrieval percentages off of unrelated inputs, like people just putting bullshit inside your quiz, right? Then that data is irrelevant and should be thrown out anyways. So that's a huge deal. That's a huge thing with calculating who's in scope and who's not in scope. But yeah, nonetheless, the in scope percentage gives you a good feel for how users are interpreting your actual like lead magnet or your headline or whatever AI system you're using, how they're interpreting it and how they're using it, if they're using it correctly or not. And this is the first thing I show in the dashboard, so that my out of scope analysis. So again, this is gonna be showing the percentage of all incoming requests that were flagged by the AI as being out of scope for fitness and wellness, okay? So it's gonna show this from what we see, right? You can see now that we have a 14% we're out of scope, and that's actually a pretty high amount. Kind of what I just mentioned, from there on with this analysis, with this dashboard, what I do, just from being like, maybe this is my statistical background, I subset all the rest of the analyses to only those that were in scope. Because again, I don't want to skew the data with out of scope requests, because these are just bullshit answers anyways. I don't want to put add more bullshit to this color of data, right? So from here on out, we only subset it to the in-scope responses. And the next thing we're going to track is the distribution of individual tags. So we want to see how often each fitness goal appears across user submissions. And again, this is just for this specific funnel. There's a bajillion different ways to do like a data analysis of results and evaluating an AI system. This is just one way I'm doing it, by the way. The whole point of this is because we're going to get a lot of metrics about like similar chunk percentage, hallucination scores, context relevance scores. In the future, you can subset it to like what's the context relevance scores for people that are training for a marathon. What's the subset or context relevance score for people that are recovering from an injury? What if it's different? Because we need to know also, because again, the whole big deal with these evaluations is identifying what we're missing in our knowledge base. So let's just say our context relevance score distribution just so happens to be really low for marathon training. Then that probably means in our knowledge base, we don't have shit about marathon training, right? The whole goal of this is eventually something may break. We just want to figure out the root cause of it and fix it, right? And the way you do that is by providing good data and having good, well-segmented data. So when shit goes wrong, you know what's the root cause of it, right? To identify individual tags, I just use this prompt right here. So just like you're a fitness goal classification expert. You guys can read this. It's pretty straightforward and screenshot this yourself. But yeah, and something I also like to do, just in case it's distribution of tag combinations, like maybe like gain weight and recover from injury just has some, like those two together have, for whatever reason, like a high hallucination rate. I don't know, right? I'm just trying to acquire as much data as possible for these dashboards. And that's going to be shown here. So yeah, so here, like the highest occurring ones recovering from an injury and training for an event. Next one's no tags assigned, reducing pain and training for an event. Things like that. The whole point of this is just to get a feel for how the results and how our customers are. Because again, with like any business, I'm sure you hear this all the time. You want to know your customers. You want to know what they're thinking, what's their biggest pain points. This gives you that. Next metric I like to track is context relevance score. And I've talked about this already. So this is going to measure how well the retrieved information. So again, remember, when we're running RAG or a chatbot, you're pulling data from your knowledge base, right? The whole point of this score is to measure how relevant that information we're pulling in from our knowledge base, how relevant that is to the actual user's request/question. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna go in more detail with the prompt, just because it's really important. So how I like to do is just on a scale of 1 to 3, and the big thing is defining the metrics of like how you're gonna define what a 1, 2, and 3 is, because you don't want to keep it vague in a prompt. You want to actually like say like, hey, 1 means this, 2 means that, 3 means that, or like whatever scale you guys use, right? So yeah, the prompt is: you are an expert relevance assessment AI. Your task is to evaluate if the provided retrieved context is relevant for answering the user request. Based on this, assign a score of 1 to 3. So 1's going to mean it's irrelevant and completely misses the point of the request. 2 means it partially, it's not comprehensive, but it partially addresses it. And 3 means it fully addresses it. So if you look here, and again, I made this demo on purpose to make it kind of shitty, but on this dashboard, all we see is 1s and 2s for the context relevance scores. What this is telling me is that obviously none of our chunks that we're pulling in for this RAG, for this chatbot to help it answer the user questions, isn't fully addressing their questions. Right? And that's what that tells me is we need to get better data for our knowledge base, essentially. So yeah, the next metric I like to track is similar chunk percentage. So this is the percentage of retrieved chunk text that were highly relevant to the user's input. When you retrieve embeddings using a vector store, you have based off a similarity score. So we like to just check if its similarity score is like 0.5 or higher. And that's what we deem as like highly relevant, quote unquote. Okay. And again, the whole point of this is just to see how well we're pulling data for specific types of questions. Because again, let's say we segment our users to those that are training for a marathon, and we notice then that like our similar chunk percentage is very high, which is good, because that means our knowledge base for what we have for training for a marathon is well written out and covers most of the questions, or like all the questions hopefully, that a user would ask. And those that are low, that means we need to add more information to that knowledge base based off of the user's questions, because we're not addressing their issues in our knowledge base. Okay. And then the next metric I go over is missing context flag distribution. So this shows how often we couldn't find relevant information for a user's input. So this flag is set when either no documents are retrieved, because sometimes like in your knowledge base, if you don't have shit, right, and your user puts in a request, let's say, again, let's go back to the example, like I have nothing in my knowledge base about back pain and the user asks for back pain. That means all of our similarity scores are probably gonna be low as shit, and our vector store is gonna return nothing, or like a bunch of documents or like chunks that are like below 0.4. If that's the case, then most of the time, then like that context isn't even relevant to the actual user request. Okay. The main goal I like to use these evaluation metrics for is to identify content gaps in our knowledge base that we're lacking coverage in, to add that in so that we can fill those holes for future user requests. Okay. So the last metric I like to check is the hallucination score. So that's using an AI to check if the AI's recommendation, right, is actually supported by the retrieved context. And we're going to score it if it's a 1, if it's grounded in facts. And when I say grounded in facts, that means is this recommendation actually pulled from our knowledge base completely? Every fact stated, is that mentioned in the chunks that we provided to the LLM at that moment in time? That would be 1, yes, which is good, and 0 if not, because that means the LLM extrapolated data from its own knowledge base to answer, which may not even be correct or relevant to how you believe things to be. Yeah, this can easily be shown just through a dashboard, like with like a pie chart like this. So this dark blue is going to be those hallucinations. So we found a 44% hallucination rate and 55% isn't. If you have a high hallucination rate, that means you probably have to look at your prompt and probably your knowledge base as well. The last thing I want to go over is making sure you guys understand the differences between context relevance and hallucination. Okay, so context relevance, it's going to be evaluating the actual context we provide into the prompt with the user's request. So right now we haven't had an LLM generate anything yet. We're just evaluating, is this request or is this context relevant to the is this relevant to the request made by the user? Okay. Hallucination score though is the answer's already been generated, so the AI has already generated an answer to the user. Okay, but we're gonna check is what we're gonna check is the answer that the AI generated using the context that we provided right from our knowledge base. Is that answer actually pulled from the context we provided? Because again, we want to make sure that that answer that we generated from our AI system that actually is pulled from the context that we provided from our internal database. Okay, so yeah, I get a lot of people get those mixed up. I just want to clarify that. But yeah, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I'm way past my bedtime. I'm tired of shit, but yeah, thank you guys so much and have a great day.